Welcome to the deep dive. You know, when you watch an elite human athlete like, say, a marathon runner crossing the finish line, or maybe a soccer player at the end of a really grueling match, you sort of expect them to broadcast their physical realities,
Right,
right?
absolutely. You expect to see it.
Right. You expect the grimace, the heavy breathing, the collapse onto the grass. Because as humans, I mean, we are evolutionarily wired to show our pack when we're hurting.
Yeah, that lactic acid builds up, the pain receptors fire.
Exactly. And our body physically forces us to slow down and basically signal for help. But today we're taking a look at an athlete that is playing by an entirely different set of biological rules.
A completely different rule book, yeah.
So imagine that marathon runner sprains an ankle at, I don't know, mile 10, right? But then they run the remaining 16 miles at a dead sprint, cross the finish line, and immediately beg you to throw a tennis ball.
And not just asks, but insists.
Yes, insists on it with this wagging tail and a bright-eyed, tongue-out smile.
You know, that image perfectly encapsulates the German Shorthaired Pointer, or GSP, returning from a morning out in the field.
It's wild.
It really is. I mean, they present as the absolute picture of health, just seemingly invincible. But that sheer joy, that endless enthusiasm they have, it actually operates as a massive biological smokescreen.
A smike screen, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and the core philosophy we're pulling from our sources today is that health awareness for a working dog, especially a GSP, it relies entirely on pattern recognition. Not worry, just pattern recognition.
Right, because knowing their normal baseline is everything.
Exactly. I mean, every breed has its own physiological themes.
Yeah.
And knowing those themes is really the only way you can spot a shift when the dog's own adrenaline is, well, trying its hardest to hide an injury from you.
And that biological smokescreen is exactly what we're focusing on today for you, our listener. We are taking a comprehensive look at a guide dedicated entirely to canine health awareness, but specifically tailored to the unique physical traits and that just relentless drive of the German short-haired pointer.
Because it's such a specific type of drive.
It really is. So our mission today is to help you decode the silent physical and behavioral signals of one of the most stoic athletes in the canine world. Because here is the central paradox from the text. Their sheer enthusiasm actually makes them incredibly dangerous to themselves.
It's their biggest vulnerability.
Okay, let's unpack this. If we're dealing with an animal whose brain actively suppresses pain signals out in the field, judging their health by how fast they run through the brush seems completely backwards.
Oh, it is arguably the worst metric you could possibly use.
Wait, really? The worst?
Without a doubt. Because out in the brush, a GSP's endocrine system is just flooding their brain with a massive cocktail of dopamine and adrenaline.
Like a runner's high, but on steroids.
Exactly. I mean, just the scent of a bird or even the thrill of an open field, it acts as a localized anesthetic. Those neurochemicals temporarily block the neurotransmitters that are responsible for broadcasting pain.
That's incredible.
So they're exposing their skeletal system to incredible shear forces. You know, twisting at high speeds, smashing through thick cover, leaping over logs, and they're feeling none of the immediate consequences.
So it's the post-game where the truth actually comes out.
Exactly right.
Because the sources emphasize this thing called the post-field check. The critical window for observation isn't when they're out there sprinting. It's like the hour after they finally flopped onto their bed by the door.
Yeah, because the adrenaline inevitably drops off, the localized anesthetic wears off, and the inflammation begins to settle into, say, the micro tears in the muscle or the cuts on the paw pads.
And that's when you see it.
That is when you observe the reality of their physical state. And you're looking for incredibly subtle shifts here. It could be a dog that is suddenly just a fraction of a second slower getting up from the floor.
Or like maybe an obsessive licking of a single joint.
Yes, exactly.
We're essentially looking for the micro expressions of movement.
That's a great way to phrase it.
Like maybe it's a slightly shortened stride as they walk across the kitchen tile to get a drink of water, or suddenly hesitating before jumping into the back of your SUV when, normally they'd clear that jump with a foot to spare.
And when you observe that hesitation or that shortened stride, the absolute worst thing you can do is wait it out.
Really? Just waiting to see if it gets better is a bad idea.
Yes, because of their immense pain tolerance. I mean, a GSP that is visibly limping or showing stiffness in the house is already dealing with a significant structural issue.
Oh, wow. Because they wouldn't show it otherwise.
Right. A dog this stoic does not limp over a minor ache. This requires a veterinarian's diagnostic tools like palpation or x-rays to see exactly what the dog has been refusing to tell you. It's never a situation to just monitor for a week, hoping it clears up on its own.
So the vet is mandatory there, not guesswork.
Absolutely.
Well, that physical wear and tear makes total sense given the speeds they hit. But the very anatomy that allows a GSP to run for hours hides an internal vulnerability that is, frankly, terrifying to read about.
It really is.
The sources dedicate serious real estate to something called bloat, which seems to be a direct consequence of their specific physical build.
Yeah, bloat or gastric dilatation volvulus is the nightmare scenario for deep-chested breeds. If you look at the GSP's profile, they have this massive, deep chest cavity that sharply tucks up into a tiny waist.
It's a very distinct silhouette.
It is. And that huge chest is an evolutionary marvel for housing massive lungs, allowing for incredible oxygen intake when they run. But physically, it means the stomach is suspended by ligaments in a rather cavernous, sort of pendulum-like space.
So I'm picturing like a heavy hammock strung way too loosely between two trees.
Okay, yes.
And if you fill that hammock with a heavy load, like a massive meal and a bunch of water, and then give it a huge swing, it seems completely primed to just flip over on itself.
That is a terrifyingly accurate visualization of gastric torsion. When the dog runs, jumps, or even just rolls over vigorously after a large meal, that heavy, loosely suspended stomach swings.
And if it flips?
If the momentum causes it to flip over, it twists both the esophagus at the top and the intestines at the bottom, completely shut.
Oh, man. So nothing can get in or out?
Nothing.
Yeah.
The gases from normal digestion are instantly trapped. The stomach expands like a balloon, and it presses incredibly hard against the vena cava, which is the major vein returning blood to the heart.
Which sounds fatal.
It's a rapid catastrophic cascade that sends the dog into shock very quickly. It is an absolute emergency.
I have to admit, hearing the mechanics of that makes me genuinely anxious. I mean, if I share my life with this breed, am I destined to just stare at their food bowl every night, completely paralyzed by the thought that my dog might go into sudden shock? Because that sounds like helicopter parenting taken to an extreme.
What's fascinating here is how the text actually reframes that exact anxiety. Bloat awareness is not about instilling fear in the bowl. It is strictly about eliminating the fatal hesitation that comes from second guessing.
Okay, so preparation instead of paranoia.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Preparation eliminates panic. You memorize the precise signal so you don't waste time wondering what to do. You're watching for unproductive retching. So the dog is trying desperately to vomit, they're heaving, but nothing comes up because, like we said, the esophagus is twisted shut.
Right.
You might also see a visibly tight, distended abdomen, excessive drooling, or this frantic, uncomfortable pacing where they just can't settle.
So it's the difference between sitting on the couch at midnight, wondering if they just ate some bad grass, and knowing with absolute certainty that your dog is in a medical crisis.
Exactly. And the text is unambiguous about this. You need to know exactly where your nearest 24/7 emergency vet is located before you ever actually need them.
Not during the crisis.
Right. And that concept of preparation extends perfectly to the external elements, too.
Yeah, let's shift to that. Because the relentless drive we keep coming back to doesn't just put their internal organs at risk. It acts as a set of, well, psychological blinders to their environment.
Oh, completely. A GSP's engine will constantly override their chassis. They will push into harsh conditions that a normal dog would immediately retreat from.
Let's look at how that impacts their thermoregulation. Because GSPs have this beautiful, tight, short coat. It looks incredibly sleek.
It does, but it has almost no insulating undercoat.
Right. So when they're in motion, their massive muscle mass acts like a furnace, generating plenty of heat. But the moment they stop, say, standing inactive in a duck blind on a freezing November morning, they lose body heat at an alarming rate.
Because there is simply no insulation trapping the warmth against their skin. Convection just pulls the heat right off their bodies. This is especially dangerous for thin, unwell, or senior dogs.
And the inverse is true in the heat, right?
Definitely. Their drive pushes them far past the point where panting can effectively cool their blood. They will literally run themselves into heat stroke simply because their desire to retrieve a bird or a ball is so deeply ingrained.
So what are you looking for there?
You're watching for excessive, uncontrollable panting, heavy drooling, confusion, or gums that turn an unusually bright red or a pale grayish color.
It really places the burden of self-preservation on the owner. You have to bring the shade, you have to force the water breaks.
You have to be the brakes.
You have to be the one to end the activity early, even while the dog is actively begging you to keep going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that same environmental blindness applies to their sensory organs, too. Think about a dog tracking a scent through the woods. They move nose first through dense, thorny brush.
Oh, yeah, their is just right in it.
Right, so their eyes take the absolute brunt of whatever they're smashing through. Seeds, thorns, dust, and pollen are constantly whipping across the cornea.
So you're looking for squinting or sudden cloudiness.
Squinting, cloudiness, excessive tearing, or a dog desperately pawing at its face.
And the ears are just as vulnerable, especially given how much this breed loves water.
Oh, the ears are a major issue. The architecture of a dog's ear canal is L-shaped, and is covered by a heavy floppy flap.
Which creates this dark, stagnant microclimate. I mean, they dive into a stagnant pond to retrieve something, trapping that bacteria-rich water deep inside that L canal.
Right, and then the heavy flap folds over, raising the temperature.
And suddenly you have a perfect incubator for a raging yeast or bacterial infection.
Exactly. You'll notice a foul odor, redness, or see them scratching or shaking their head violently as the pressure builds up inside the canal.
So what does this all mean for the stuff I already have in my bathroom? I mean, if my dog comes out of the swamp with a funky-smelling ear or a weeping eye, the immediate temptation is to just grab some human allergy eye drops or maybe a home remedy vinegar flush to clean the ear out.
The guide is unequivocally strict about this. Do not, under any circumstances, use home remedies in those areas.
Well, never.
Never. Because of that L-shaped ear canal, you cannot see the eardrum from the outside. If that eardrum happens to be ruptured from a deep dive or a punctured stick, and you pour an acidic liquid home remedy down there, you risk migrating the infection deep into the middle ear. You could cause permanent neurological damage and deafness.
So keep the human medicine cabinet closed.
Always. Similarly, a minor corneal scratch from a thorn can rapidly deteriorate into a massive ulcer if you blindly apply an over-the-counter drop that contains steroids.
That makes sense.
These are highly sensitive, complex systems. They require specialized veterinary diagnostics like fluorescent eye stains or ear swabs to treat safely.
Understood. No guessing.
Yeah.
Now, fueling a machine that willingly smashes through briars and freezes in ponds requires incredible metabolic stability. Everything we've discussed, the stamina, the heat generation, the muscle repair, it all relies on an ironclad internal pipeline.
It does.
And that pipeline starts at the mouth and ends with digestion.
Yeah, and active dogs face an onslaught of gastrointestinal variables that a normal house dog never encounters.
Like what?
Well, they're constantly drinking from questionable new water sources in the field. They scavenge. They deal with stress-induced cortisol spikes from long truck rides or travel, which can actually alter their gut permeability.
Yeah.
Plus, just the sheer physical stress of overexertion throws their microbiome into chaos.
So we're monitoring for appetite changes, vomiting, diarrhea, or unusual bass. And persistent issues need a vet, not just a diet change.
Right.
And again, because their metabolism is running so high, weight changes happen rapidly. The sources make a crucial point that for a GSP, weight is intimately tied to motion.
Yes. A lean dog isn't necessarily starving or neglected, and a heavy, thick dog isn't necessarily strong.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
a stable gut and proper weight management are the absolute foundation of what the sources call the health of motion. Emphasizing that a comfortable mouth and stable stomach are the foundations of their physical joy.
I love that. And you mentioned the mouth. I look at a retrieving dog's mouth the way I look at the hands of a star wide receiver in football.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
Right. Because for a GSP, the mouth is everything. It's how they carry things, how they explore, how they interact with their world. If a wide receiver has broken fingers, their entire career is compromised.
Absolutely.
If a retrieving-obsessed, food-motivated dog has fractured teeth from carrying heavy wooden dummies or severely inflamed gums, their entire quality of life plummets.
A dog that lives to retrieve deserves a comfortable mouth to do it with. But dental health is shockingly overlooked in these working breeds. People tend to think of dental care as a cosmetic issue, but for a dog, it is highly systemic.
So bad breath isn't just normal dog smell.
No. Many owners dismiss foul breath as an unavoidable trait. But in a sporting dog, terrible breath is a blaring alarm bell for periodontal disease. The bacteria from decaying gums doesn't just stay in the mouth, it enters the bloodstream and severely impacts the heart and kidneys over time.
Which is terrifying.
It is. You might notice behavioral clues first, actually, like the dog chewing very delicately on just one side of their mouth, or suddenly dropping their kibble on the floor.
Yeah.
Dental care must start well before the senior years. If you wait until they are seniors to address their teeth, they've likely spent years performing their favorite tasks through a haze of constant throbbing pain.
Which brings us perfectly to the ultimate barometer of canine health. We've talked about sore joints, a flipping stomach, infected ears, and aching teeth. But long before a stoic GSP physically collapses or refuses to run, their brain is going to try and tell you that something is chemically or physically wrong.
The behavioral shift is the very first indicator of systemic stress. It happens long before the physical limp or the visible swelling.
Because the mind goes first.
Exactly. Chronic, low-grade pain actually depletes a dog's serotonin levels, which profoundly alters their personality.
The sources list some highly specific behavioral shifts to watch for, like a naturally boisterous dog suddenly becoming unusually quiet,
Right. Or an independent dog acting suddenly clingy and anxious.
or a sudden reluctance to be touched on the neck or the ears, or a dog that just can't seem to settle down and sleep at night, constantly shifting positions.
And these are vital clinical clues. That sudden clinginess could be the onset of an ear infection throwing off their equilibrium, making them feel dizzy and vulnerable.
Oh, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah. Or the inability to settle at night could be the early throes of joint pain flaring up as the house cools down, or even heat stress catching up with them hours after a run.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Is a sudden behavioral shift, like clinginess, essentially the dog's check engine light turning on before the smoke actually starts pouring out?
Yes, that is exactly what it is. And the goal is not for you to play armchair veterinarian and diagnose a torn ligament because your dog is acting grumpy. The goal is to recognize the behavioral shift as a legitimate medical symptom and consult a professional. You never dismiss collapse, breathing difficulty, or a sudden shift in behavior as just energy or just being a GSP.
And to recognize a shift, you need a flawless, objective understanding of what their normal actually is.
Which is why the sources heavily emphasize tracking.
Right, actually recording the data, noting their weight trends month over month, the quality of their stool, and specifically how long it takes them to recover from a 2-mile run in October versus a 2-mile run in May.
Because our human memory is incredibly biased, especially when we love the animal. We tend to remember what we want to remember about our dog's health.
We think they're fine because we want them to be fine.
Exactly. The source text explicitly highlights keeping routines and records organized, and mentions an app called VitalPet to log all of this. Establishing a veterinary baseline early on, especially if you're adopting, is paramount. Plan for senior health well before the dog is actually a senior.
And ask breeders about health testing and family history, too.
Yes. When you have that history and track the dog's data consistently, you aren't guessing if your dog has lost weight or if their recovery is slower than last season. You have the actual metrics right in front of you. Oh, and I should gently remind our listeners that this deep dive is for educational purposes. A veterinarian should always be consulted for any health concerns, just as the source notes.
Always. So as we wrap up, what does this all mean for you as the listener? Today, we've essentially handed you a decoder ring for the silent, complex language of a driven athlete.
A very stoic athlete.
Yes. You now know to look at the micro-expressions of their recovery, not just their blistering speed in the field. You understand the literal physics of their deep-chested anatomy that makes bloat such a rapid hazard.
You know how to inspect their sensory organs for environmental wear and tear.
Exactly. And most importantly, you know to treat a subtle behavioral shift as a glaring clinical symptom.
You've moved from simply watching your dog perform to actively observing and protecting the entire biological system that makes that joyful performance possible.
But I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on as we close out. We talked extensively today about how these dogs will happily run themselves into heat stroke or retrieve a bird on a fractured tooth, all because their drive is so astronomically high.
Yeah.
If humanity spent generations selectively breeding these working dogs for such relentless drive and extreme, unyielding enthusiasm, did we accidentally strip away their evolutionary instinct for self-preservation?
Oh, wow.
And if we did, doesn't that place the absolute ultimate burden of their survival squarely on the shoulders of the human observer?
It frames our responsibility to them in a profound, almost daunting new light.
It really does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep observing, keep asking the hard questions, and keep learning. We'll catch you next time.